Determine whether f of x equals x to the fifth minus x is even, odd, or neither. Remember that if we have an even function, what that means is that f of negative x is equal to f of x. That's what gives us that symmetry across the y-axis. For an odd function, we have f of negative x equals negative f of x. And of course, I'm saying negative as a shortcut. It really should be saying the opposite of f of x, because if f of x is negative, then putting the negative out front makes it positive. So really, we should be saying the opposite of f of x, but oftentimes people take the shortcut of saying negative. Anyways, so what we need to do with this function is we need to evaluate it at negative x and see if our result is equal to the original function, in which case we know it's even, is equal to the opposite of the original function, in which case we know it's odd, or, of course, it could be equal to something else entirely, in which case neither is true. So let's see what we get if we evaluate this function at negative x, or the opposite of x. This is going to be negative x to the fifth minus negative x. Now, when we have a negative raised to a fifth power, 4 of those negatives cancel, but we are left with one of them. So we're going to have one negative left, and then, of course, the x to the fifth. And then when we are subtracting a negative, that's the same as adding. So that's the same as plus x. Now, this is not equal to f of x, so we know that it's not even, but it might be equal to the opposite of f of x, in which case it would be odd. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out a negative 1. I'm going to pull out a negative. And when I do that, I'm left with positive x to the fifth and then negative x. And you'll notice that this in here is our original function, f of x. So this is equal to the opposite of f of x. And because f of negative x is equal to the opposite of f of x, we know that this function is odd. One way to tell if a polynomial is odd is if all of the degrees of x are odd numbers. This was x to the fifth minus x to the first, technically. When you have a polynomial where all of the terms are odd, you will end up having an odd function in the end, because all of them will have an extra negative in the end. All the negatives will cancel except for one in each term, and you end up having the opposite of each term in the end.